let's talk about coming to the Torah and our expectations with relationships and with reactions that people may have to us. Whenever I first started coming to the Torah and realizing that in seeking to love the Creator and seeking to serve the Father, that part of loving Him and part of serving Him is following after the commands that He commanded us. It's seeking after what is good and right in His sight, according to Deuteronomy 12:28. In starting to recognize that, I thought, wow, this is so obvious. This is so obvious. If I just went and showed some of the people I know, especially those that are close to me, and especially those that I consider to be reasonable and consider to be intelligent, they would see that it is so obvious as well. And indeed, it is obvious. It really should be obvious. The thing is that, as with many people I've spoken with on this issue, many people that have also come to the Torah and have had that naive expectation, most people will not see it. And in some ways, they won't even be able to see it. Consider that we didn't see it before. That at some point, due to some reason, we started recognizing that the Torah is still in effect. That following after the commands is the thing that He wants us to do. And we started seeing that everywhere, even places that we had read over and over before and didn't see it. We started seeing it all over the place. And it's so obvious, and it really is so obvious. But we're dealing with issues of beliefs. We're dealing with issues of closely held beliefs, theological beliefs, beliefs on which the way that we perceive the entire world practically hinge upon, the way that we perceive life in general. These are very closely held beliefs for most people. And even in the case of people having non-beliefs on this issue, those still function in the same way. They are still beliefs. And beliefs, a lot of times, are not just reliant upon logic. You can present the most solid case. You can show all of the proof texts, all of the logical arguments for the Torah. You can be completely correct in it. You can show them how the Torah truly is the most valid way to look at the biblical text. That following after the Torah is the way that is commanded. And you can be 100% right and show them all of these points. And that may not matter, because there are other things going on other than just seeing what the text says, or other than just understanding what is being presented, understanding the fact that the Torah still applies. It goes beyond that. We're getting into beliefs, issues that also affect people's family. They affect what it is they do in the world. They affect their expectations of the world and their expectations for their life. They have very far-reaching implications. So it's not just about presenting that information. So I wanted to prepare people that in coming to the Torah, there are going to be changes. It's not just an issue of changing your beliefs and changing your observance. There are going to be other changes as well, other changes that you may not realize yet. One of those changes is going to be in regard to your relationships. A lot of people are not going to listen to you. Now, this is not being said to discourage you from sharing it with them or discourage you from making it apparent that you are seeking after Him in this way. I believe that we should be forthright about that and seek to present it whenever those opportunities arise. The thing is that it's likely that very few people will respond to that in a positive way. Even if we love them very much, even if we really hope that they do, even if we really think that they should. We need to prepare ourselves for the possibility that many people are going to reject the Torah, many people are going to reject us, even though it is so obvious. And I wanted to talk about some more general categories of responses that we may get, general reactions we may get, and impacts on relationships, and also offer some specific examples of things that I've witnessed or things that I've heard about through other people. So let's talk about the 4 categories of people, 4 categories of responses. The first one is, you may present the Torah. Either someone's asking you about, so what is it that what you believe now? What is it that you're doing now? Why are you doing that? You might get someone that actually decides, okay, I guess it's right. And this may be almost instantly, or it may be over a gradual period of time, but it is possible that someone will come around. Now, this does not mean that they will stay on track even if they do come around, because sometimes difficulties come up, which is one reason that I'm preparing you with this information. Difficulties come up, like different reactions that people have and different family issues that sometimes discourage people from continuing. So this is probably the most rare reaction you will get, that someone will just very rapidly agree without much resistance. But even in that case, it may not be permanent, so be aware of that. The second type of reaction is that people will want to disengage with you completely. And you may be in some position where you're sharing or presenting about the Torah with them, and you may realize that they don't care. And so they may have seemed like someone that was observant of their beliefs, or that cared about the Creator in the way that they were raised to. But you may realize that those people, they didn't really care that much. And so they may not even want to bother with it, may not care to look into it or anything, and don't want to talk about it. Or someone may just completely disengage from you because they just completely disagree and are completely closed off to it. So that's also a possibility, and you may never hear from them again in a very literal way. So disengaging from you is the second possibility. The third possibility, the third category, is that people may not know how to respond. That they may see some kind of validity in it. That's not to say that they agree, but they see that you have some kind of point, or that something's going on that they don't quite understand. And it may make them uncomfortable. And this may look like they agree with you on some level, or they know it's right, but that may not actually be the case. This is a mistake I made early on in thinking that just because people have that kind of reaction that they realize on some level that it's right. That may not be the case. They may still believe that fundamentally their belief system is right. There are just certain things that they don't understand yet. So there are those people that they don't know how to respond. And the fourth group is the person that sees the validity in it and recognizes that it might be true, but they have reservations or objections that hold them back. So this can take place in a variety of different ways. It's something that I've witnessed multiple times, seemingly. A lot of times these people will talk about, yeah, if I came around, then my family may reject me, things like that. Or I would have to do X, Y, and Z differently that I don't want to do differently. And sometimes people, they'll actually say stuff like, I'm afraid that you're right. So these type of people, these people that have the objections, that see the validity to the Torah, but have the objections, in my view, they're either going to go one of two ways. Because this is a very uncomfortable position to be in. To believe that on some level that the Torah may be right, but the person is not doing it. These two beliefs cannot coexist in most people and allow them to remain comfortable in the way they live. So it has to go one of two ways. They either eventually will come around and accept that, okay, the Torah is what is important. Seeking after the Creator and doing what the Creator wants is what's important. Either they have to go in that direction eventually, and it may not be instantly, it may be over a prolonged period of time, or they'll eventually decide, oh, forget about all that, it's wrong, and they won't have any real reason behind it. They just figured out some way to react to it, some way to portray it in their mind that allows them to forget about it. So we have these four categories of responses. Either someone's going to agree very rapidly, or they're going to just completely disengage and not want to talk about it for one reason or another, or they may see validity in some point, but they're going to continue believing that fundamentally their existing beliefs are right. Or someone that thinks you could be right, but has reservations about it and doesn't want to look into it, or doesn't want to act upon it, or sort out some issue. And these can exist regardless of whether you're engaging on a scriptural level or not. Sometimes people will want to engage with us and discuss actual scripture or actual biblical text, or discuss actual ideas that relate to it. In those cases, people sometimes will talk with you over a longer period of time because they're genuinely interested in sorting this out. But a lot of times people are going to eventually want to disengage. They're going to feel like, well, I gave it a try and they didn't listen, so I guess forget about it, there's no hope. So this could go on in a number of different ways. Just because someone's engaging with you scripturally does not mean that they're actually listening. But I have witnessed situations where people try to persuade other people and try to understand scripturally so they can counteract it and get you to return to Christianity or whatever the case may be. And then in the process, they realize, I guess they do have a point. I guess the Torah is the way. So those are some possibilities as well. Now, the thing is that a lot of people are not going to respond in a scriptural way, either being initially or eventually. A lot of people are not going to want to address it specifically. And I'm going to get into more kind of the emotional type responses, the more irrational type responses that you may get. And these are a series of examples of things that either I personally witnessed, either once or multiple times, or that someone else informed me about, some experience that they had. So some examples of things that you might encounter. First off, in regard to your home. And this is probably especially going to be the case if you're not the head of your household, but hypothetically it could take place either way. So you may get some strong reactions at home. And from what I've seen, as I've talked about in my video about relationships with non-observers, and check out the playlist in the description below for that. What I've generally seen is that if a spouse is going to come around to the Torah, it should take place pretty quickly, because in these types of situations, people have an interest in making the relationship work. And so if you're coming to new beliefs, hopefully your spouse will want to know why, and hopefully they'll want to address it in a reasonable way. So in that case, there would be opportunity that they may come around. The thing is, it should not take place over a long period of time, in my view. From what I have seen, if someone comes around, if the spouse or the person that you're in a relationship with in that way comes around, it's going to take place within a few months. It's probably not going to be talking about years. They're probably not going to come around in that case. So something to be aware of. But if people are very resistant to you in your house, observing the Torah, some things you might witness are just generalized anger and frustration. People just don't know how to respond to what you're doing. And some ways this may manifest is, instead of direct responses to your observance, they may just overgeneralize something you're doing as being bad. So something that may have not been an issue at all in the past, it may be portrayed in a bad light. It may be interpreted as meaning something bad. And so they may criticize you for doing things that used to be irrelevant, that used to be acceptable. And this is probably just, they're upset, they don't know what to do, and this is just one way it's coming out. They're just venting their frustration and putting that onto other things that aren't really relevant. And in regard to specific things we may do, things like eating kosher, we may be preparing food separate from the rest of the family, for example, and we may be not eating what they're eating all the time. And this may be seen as some kind of personal slight. This may be seen as something that's an attack on them, even though clearly it's not. It may be interpreted as that. And also things like observing the Sabbath, ceasing from our work, ceasing from our deeds on the seventh day of the week. The rest of the family may be wanting to do work on that day. They may be doing work around the house. And we may see this, and they may try to get us to help. That may have been the expectation in the past, for example. The thing is that they are going to want us to do that, and in observing the Sabbath and ceasing from work, we're not going to do it. And so if they can't get you to compromise and give in, they might accuse you of being lazy. They might perceive that as like not pulling your weight or whatever the case may be. That may be seen as a big problem in their eyes. And it's probably not going to be interpreted in a positive way. It's not going to be seen for what it is. And also there's the issue of pagan holidays. So if you were in a position where your family or extended family would meet up for various pagan holidays that most people know to be pagan, whether they want to admit it or not, that people know that they are not in service of the true Elohim. And even if they perceive them as being purified, and even if that was hypothetically the case, we are observing the Torah now. So these observances for other Elohim, these celebrations like that were for other Elohim and doing pagan practices, even if they characterize it as just meeting with your family or just doing something nice or just caring about your relatives, whatever the case may be, this is still an issue of not wanting to observe their holidays and wanting to observe the Torah and the Torah holidays instead. And I've seen this turn into and be interpreted as you're tearing apart the family. You are ruining the family experience and you're destroying the relationships. Some people actually, some of your extended family, for example, may actually say these things to you. Of course, it's not about that, but that's not the way they're going to see it a lot of times. And in the process, that's going to be all on you. It's not going to be an issue of them wanting to join you for your observance of the Torah feasts and celebrations. They're probably not going to want to do that, but they're going to expect you to compromise your beliefs and your observance. Another thing that I've witnessed is a forced reading of certain passages. And of course this makes sense because if they're wanting you to return to what they believe to be the true way, for example, Christianity, if they are Christians, they may try to sit you down and say, look over these verses in Hebrews, read over these verses in Galatians. And in the process, they may want you to not pay any attention to what the Torah says. and experiences where people are trying to tell you what to believe, but will not let you respond. So they may just talk over you, raise their voice, and speed up in their speech anytime you try to say anything about it. They just do not want you to get any word in on the issue. They just want you to hear what they have to say, and that's it. And there also may be situations where someone may be in the other room and start praying very loudly with presumably the intention that you would hear, or reading out loud verses like from Galatians very loudly so that you can hear it. So that's also a possibility. And sometimes people may try to cast out demons. They'll do various rituals to cast out demons in their view because they believe that for whatever reason that the commandments of the Creator are evil. So it may not make sense to us in that light, but it makes sense to them, of course. And another possibility is that they may have a very angry reaction to observing certain commands. So you may come home and you have the commanded zitzit, the zitziot, the tassels on your clothes, and they see that, and they may have a very angry response toward you. This is something I've heard about, and this could be even to the degree that it persuades some people to stop observing, from what I've witnessed. And in general, I want to remind us that these mischaracterizations of what we're doing, these personal attacks or these irrational responses, it's not really about us. A lot of times it's about the person just protecting themselves in their view. They're trying to preserve their beliefs, and they're trying to allow themselves to feel comfortable about doing what they're doing. This doesn't necessarily mean that they realize the truth, but there is some trigger for them to cause these reactions. And I think that we shouldn't see it as, oh, these people are, being hateful toward us or whatever. That we should be kind of empathetic toward it and recognize that they're not doing it because of us. Something you may hear also is reference to the word cult. That, oh, he's coming to a cult now. He's in a cult now, or he's in the beginning stages of a cult. Something like that. So this is a matter of playing word games. It's just a matter of finding a way to describe what's going on in a way that allows you to be comfortable. So if you say something's a cult, well, what does that mean? It groups people together into this category of all this ridiculous behavior like suicide pacts and all of that, and these things that are just deemed ridiculous. And so if you say, oh, it's a cult, then that brings up all of those thoughts in the process. And another thing about a cult is if it's a cult, it's not credible just by the wording of it. And so it's something you don't have to listen to. So if someone is in a cult, instead of following a different belief system, then there's obviously this negative slant being put on it. So this is just a way that people use to describe what you're doing to make themselves feel better. And brainwashing. So they've become brainwashed, or so-and-so brainwashed you. Brainwashing is kind of like the wording of cult. So what does brainwashing even mean? A lot of people do not have a very specific definition for it. It's just some vague idea. But here's what brainwashing means. It means that person was persuaded by something I disagree with. All brainwashing is persuasion or being convinced of something in general. And brainwashing is obviously the negative slant being put on it. So if we called it, the person was convinced that the following after the commands is the way we're supposed to do it, that obviously puts a different slant on it than saying that person was brainwashed into those beliefs. It's just playing word games with it, just like the word cult. It's just a matter of describing things differently. He was never actually saved. So in Christianity, there's this belief about being saved, of course, and obviously it's the most important thing in their beliefs generally. And some people have the belief that in the once saved, always saved. So that may be one reason for this. You were never saved to begin with. Another aspect of it is that if you were in a congregation or a church and you had these peers that were around you and it seemed like you were connecting and that you all were going after the same thing, and that you all were seeking after what they perceived to be the truth and worshiping in the way they perceived to be right, there's this natural tendency that if someone that you relate to in that way suddenly gets up and does something different, that we have this reaction of, should I be doing that too? Should I be getting up and going and doing that different thing? So there's this natural reaction to feel compelled to follow after those that are like us, because they're like us, they're just like us, they're just in the same position as us, they follow the same things as us, and they have the same motives and beliefs and all of that. And so if they go up and do something different, something we hadn't considered, maybe there's something going on that we need to pay attention to. And so if a person says that, well, they were never saved all along, this could be a way that they are just dismissing the fact that you were among them, you were a peer, you were a member of the group, and permitting them to not pay any attention to what you're doing. So once again, it's not about you, and they're just changing history in their mind to fit that and to make themselves feel comfortable. Similarly to this is the idea that he used to be so good, but now. And this is something that I heard people supposedly said about me. And this is similar, once again, to that you were never saved, except that they're, instead of changing the past, they are changing what's going on, your motives right now. And so they believe that in the past you were on the right track, you were doing the right things, you were following after the truth in their eyes. And then you realized, hey, we need to be following the Torah. But in order to explain that, in order to tell themselves a story of what's going on that makes them comfortable, they have to say, well, your motives must have changed. That if you still had good intentions, you would still be doing what I'm doing. So this is another way to dismiss what you're doing and to make you not credible in their eyes. It's just a way for them to continue feeling comfortable. This is just a phase. It's just a rebellious phase, or this is just your trip around the sun. So this is similar to the previous two as well. Characterizing what you're doing, the seeking after the commandments, seeking after the Creator according to what He told us to do. They're just characterizing it as, oh, this is just a rebellious phase and you'll get over it and it's nothing to be concerned about. So obviously, if they have that belief, if they describe the situation to themselves that way, then they don't have to listen to what you're doing. They don't have to even think about it. They don't have to think about the specifics of it. In a way, that's kind of like the cult thing, because if you say something's a cult, rather than saying, oh yeah, he believes in following the commandments of the Father now, if you say it's a cult, or if you say this is just a rebellious phase, you don't have to think about the facts of the matter. You're just leaning on your own understanding now. This is kind of an interesting one, because a lot of times people are just worried about what the pastor says or what the traditions that they've inherited say. And in seeking what is it the Creator wants us to do, what is it the Father has commanded, inherently we are assuming that the way that we personally understood before was incorrect, and that we want to rely on what He wants from us, obeying His Torah. We want to serve Him according to what He wants. So obviously it doesn't really pass the sniff test to us to say, oh, you're leaning on your own understanding, because the very thing we're trying to do is return to what he commanded, what the Creator commanded. But this is a way that people address the issue, explain it to themselves. You're just leaning on your own understanding. What this really means is you're not listening to the experts that they want to listen to. You're not believing the things that they are wanting to believe. And this is a way to excuse not listening to you. Sometimes you may get some very abrasive responses, to say the least, even from people you care about, even from people that were once close friends of yours. So one response that I got, well, I'm going to cut off ties. And he posted publicly on Facebook that basically that I could go to heck and stop trying to bring people with me. And obviously this was kind of troubling, kind of disturbing to see someone say, someone that I once considered a close friend. But these types of things can go on. And I kind of believe that that's a byproduct of what I referred to earlier. I referred to that the fourth type of person, the person that sees some validity in it but has reservations, that they cannot continue with believing the Torah might be right, and yet I have reservations that I don't want to follow it for some reason. They can't continue going on that way. They can't continue just, not following the Torah if they believe it might be right. And so either they have to come around and start following it, or they have to have a more rash response to it, such as this one. So you may see some very hateful things directed toward you. It's not about you. It's just a way that they're dealing with it. It's lousy. It's not something that we want to see, but it could go on. Another response that I've witnessed, and in my view, this illustrates that a person is probably never going to come around, is the reaction that this is the forces of evil at work. This is Satan and his demons trying to influence people. And at that point, there's not really much you can do, in my view. I try to be kind of optimistic about sharing the Torah with people, even though I know that most of them probably aren't going to listen, that I don't want to close off opportunities. But if a person has decided that following after the commands of the Creator is the work of Satan, it's not going to matter if there are signs and wonders. It's not going to matter what evidence is brought forth. It doesn't matter how many scriptural proofs are brought forth, because it's all going to be filtered under that in saying that, well, this is just further pressure for me to dismiss my beliefs. This is what I've been warned about all my life, that evil is going to come and try to convince me to believe something else, or convince me to not continue in this way. And this is just what I've been warned about, and the increasing evidence, the increasing signs, this is just reason to become even stronger and resist it. So in those situations, there's probably not a lot of hope for that kind of person, even though it is sad that that is the case. Kind of an interesting response I've seen is that Christians and Jews will sometimes, even though they believe in the Torah on some level, criticize the commands of the Torah and criticize the observance of it as if it's some kind of ridiculous or stupid thing. I've even heard people use that kind of terminology, that that's stupid in regard to some type of command. How exactly they work that out in their minds while still believing in the author of those commands, I don't really know, but it does go on. Also, something you may experience, especially in the case of someone that is recognizing the validity of what you're saying, is very irrational reactions, irrational arguments. So I've experienced this and witnessed it multiple times. So presenting the truth of the Torah to someone, saying, well, look what it says here in these passages, and then the person becomes obviously uncomfortable by what they're hearing and what they're seeing, and then kind of has a rash, just rapid reaction to it, saying something that may not even make any sense at all. Things that do not have any validity whatsoever to them. And it could be something just completely out of nowhere. And a couple of times that I had this, it was like, what? What do you mean by that? And are you not telling me all of what your point is? And just kind of caught me off guard, because I found it to be completely just out of the blue and irrelevant, and would require just the ignoring of the facts. And a lot of times what follows this, immediately after that rash reaction, that being upset and just the first thing that comes to mind coming out, is just complete disengaging from it, not wanting to talk about it anymore. And this can go on in multiple different ways, but usually what it is, in my view, is the person knows they have no response, and they are just desperately looking for any way that they can, anything to latch onto to continue believing what they believe. And even amongst people that are very intelligent, very well read, for example, someone that I knew to be those things and that had proved it academically and was very active in the church, even amongst people like that, they can have just these completely irrational reactions where they're just latching on to anything that comes out of their mouth, basically. And this can go on in groups of people too. Like, you may present the truth of the Torah to a group of people, and everyone there may be thinking, oh, he has some points. And then someone might say, oh, this, unreasonable thing. And then everyone else is like, oh, yeah, what he said is right. Yeah. So people will get carried away in that. They'll be wanting anything that they can to not have to listen to the truth of the Torah. And I don't believe that in general this is out of any ill will, which is kind of the sad thing about it. I think it really is that they think they need to continue in their previous ways, that they feel on some level like it's wrong to follow the Torah for some reason. And so you may see some of these irrational reactions. And one thing I witnessed one time was a person just kind of detached from the situation and kept repeating his beliefs over and over. He absolutely had no reaction whatsoever other than, I believe this, I believe this, I believe this. And he wasn't able to respond at all. So from my experience, the way that goes, usually the person will just completely not want to talk about it anymore after that point. And usually it seems that it's because they recognize the truth to it on some level. And finally, the last thing that you might experience is being made an example of. So if you were active in a congregation or a church, you may witness a situation where a pastor basically gives up on you. And maybe they had given up on you basically from the beginning, or maybe at some point they decided, well, he's too obsessed with these books of the Torah and too obsessed with the commands, so we're just going to move on and protect the flock. So obviously, if you are coming to the truth of the Torah and there are people around you that are aware of it, the pastor that may be aware of this, he probably has good intentions, maybe not in every case, but he probably has good intentions and believes that his beliefs are right. And so he's going to go into defensive mode and try to protect the flock from you and from the Torah. And so they may make an example of you in some way, may mischaracterize what you're doing in just a very bad light, and try to make you out to be doing the wrong thing, and try to characterize the following of the commands as being bad. So this is a possibility. Once again, don't take any of these things personally. It can be easy to look at this and think, these people are just being hateful toward me. And in some way that is true in some cases. The thing is that it's not about you. It's about them trying to protect themselves in their view. Obviously, the Torah is the valid way. It's the true way. And it's not something that should be protected against, but they don't have that understanding. They believe what they believe, and they believe that they need to continue doing that. And on some level, if they have to resort to these reactions, they don't have answers. They don't have any response to it other than that. So they're resorting to these kind of rash responses, these emotional and irrational reactions as a result of that, to protect themselves in their view, or to protect other people in their view. So some of these reactions, some of these possible responses that you may get, and some of these different types of people you may witness, these are things that we need to prepare for. We need to be mindful of our expectations, because it can be easy to become very hopeful, especially in regard to specific people that we value in our life. There may be people that are very close to us that we love and care a great deal about. The thing is that they may not see the validity of the Torah. And that's something that we have to be prepared for. We need to manage our expectations, because the thing is that people are going to reject us. People are going to reject the Torah. Hopefully, it's not the people that you care most about. But we don't know yet, necessarily. It is yet to be seen. So manage our expectations. I present this to you to inform you that we need to be prepared. In some sense, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. This is not to discourage you from sharing the Torah, and in some ways, I believe that in any of these cases, we should always try to maintain our cool, maintain our calm, and proceed as if there is hope. On some level, we may think there's no point, but that does not excuse us going down this path as well. I think we should maintain our strength as much as possible and strengthen ourselves, prepare ourselves for these possibilities. There are a lot of changes ahead. Some of these changes you've already experienced and you're experiencing. Some of them you may not have experienced yet. And some of these changes may be extremely painful. They may be very difficult to persevere through. But these are challenges for us. They're challenges on our path in the truth, in our seeking after the Creator, in our seeking after what He has commanded, and in our prioritizing of Him above these other things. In some cases, it will be very difficult, but these are challenges that we must strengthen ourselves for. And this is one reason, among others, that I strongly recommend that we get involved with the community. There's another project that I'm working on, although it is not completed yet. As of the filming of this video, I do not have the information up for it, but I intend to have it in the description below once I do so. So we need to develop a community. The community is very important, a community of Torah observers and Torah keepers. People that actually serve the Creator, not just in their words, not just in their beliefs, but in their actions too, in their priorities, and what they actually do in their life, how they live. And we need to find these people, whether they're in your local area, or even if it's just talking with people online that share those beliefs and share that observance and share those priorities. And having a community to connect with, of course, can help support us in those challenges. But we need to build ourselves up as well. We need to strengthen ourselves. Why is it that following after the Creator matters? Why does it matter? Why is it important to you? Why is it important? Why is it a priority for us to seek after the Creator, to seek after loving Him and serving Him with all of our heart, all of our being? What is important about that? Keep that in mind. Build up those reasons. Remember those reasons. And strengthen ourselves. We have the strength, and we can get the strength to meet these challenges. There will be changes. There will be challenges. Strengthen ourselves in the Torah and in our seeking after the Creator. Remember the commands. Shalom.